I go by Carol, and am 22 years old. Having recently graduated from college, I have a story to share regarding my residence. Technically, my mother's house, or it was till she died from colon cancer 4 years ago and left it to me. Mom was always the planning sort. She checked everything to be in order even before the cancer diagnosis. Her house was free and clear. She had purchased it before she even saw my dad, and thank God for her foresight. She ensured I also knew about the will. This way you'll always have a home, she advised me, her voice firm, despite all she was going through. Not always this complex were things. 10 years passed in the marriage of my parents before Dad chose to leave for another woman. When he packed, I was 9 years old. He simply left without any drama or conflict over property or custody. He promised just to pay for my college tuition. Right away, he opened a special account and moved the whole amount for my future education. That was, I suppose, his form of child support. Dad soon began a new family. Linda, his wife, had their daughter not too long later. She is 10 years my younger. Though it never felt right, I would visit sometimes staying at their rented house. Linda would be occupied with my half-sister arranging her hair or crowing over her most recent achievement. Claiming he had to support his family, Dad was always working. Funny how I dropped out of that group really recently. "Carol, would you want to go to dinner with us?" Linda would inquiry. Her voice, however, constantly suggested she hoped I would turn down. Still, we maintained a friendly relationship. Birthday card exchange, holiday welcome, one forced family dinner here and there. It was all quite courteous and appropriate, in that awkward kind that causes your skin to crawl. Mom earned decent pay working as a senior accountant. She could therefore concentrate totally on treatment when the cancer struck. When the diagnosis came, I was 14. She quit right away to concentrate on battling the illness. We lived between visits to hospitals and therapy sessions for 4 years. Mom never voiced a complaint once. She just kept on battling, kept in constant planning, kept watching to see if I would be all right. But cancer has no idea of planning. She passed when I was 18, just a few weeks before I was meant to be leaving for another state's college. The loss really knocked me down. I was scarcely able to operate. Dad then shocked me by really becoming involved. To help me get through the loss, Linda, my half-sister, and he moved in temporarily. At the time, I was too numb to question it. I was also rather appreciative of whatever help I could obtain. Dad slung his arm around my shoulders and said, "We'll help you through this." Linda nodded along, attempting to seem empathetic, while my half-sister looked about what was now my house. I had a problem toward the end of July. With Mom's house now, my house, I had no idea what to do when college started in a few weeks. Though sitting it empty for 4 years didn't seem prudent either, I couldn't handle the idea of selling it. It was at this point Dad developed his idea, saying, "Carol," tossing his coffee mug aside at breakfast one morning, he said, "I've been considering, and what if we stayed here? We would keep the place and pay all of the bills. While you are in school, you would not have to worry about anything." I turned to check Linda at the stove cooking pancakes. She reversed and grinned. "It would be good for every one of us," she said. Sophie already enrolled in the nearby school. The house would be well taken care of. Made sense. 2 months they had been residing with me, and things had been somewhat normal. Linda had stopped being so distant, and Sophie, my half-sister, had actually started treating me like a real sister instead of some stranger who showed up occasionally. So I agreed. Looking back, it seemed like the perfect solution. I packed up Mom's personal things, keeping what I wanted and storing the rest in the attic. I left for college feeling confident about my decision. Over the next 4 years, I came home during holidays and summer breaks. Those visits were nice, actually. Linda would cook these big welcome home dinners, "I made your favorite lasagna," she'd say, as if she'd always known my favorites. Sophie would drag me to her room to show me her latest artwork or tell me about school drama. During Christmas breaks, we'd all decorate the tree together. Dad would lift Sophie to put the star on top while Linda and I argued good-naturedly about whether tinsel was tacky or classic. We'd sit around drinking hot chocolate, and sometimes I could almost forget that this wasn't the family I started with. Summer visits were different, longer, more relaxed. Sophie and I would spend afternoons by the community pool, and I'd help her with her summer reading. Linda would invite me to her book club meetings, and we'd actually have fun dissecting whatever romance novel they'd chosen that month. "Your sister's so good with Sophie," I overheard Linda telling Dad one evening. "It's nice having her home." That made me feel warm inside, like maybe we really had become a proper family. I gave regular calls during semesters, Dad's weekly conversations on my classes, keeping up with Linda on house upkeep. "The roses you planted are blooming rather beautifully, Carol." Facet time meetings with Sophie kept me informed about her middle school exploits. Everything appeared to be just. Built on the basis of my mother's house, we had developed an unusual but useful family dynamic. I never considered it might all go apart so rapidly. Still, I suppose that's the essence of housing. You never know what's going on behind the walls, regardless of how strong the foundation is. At 22, with my degree in hand and a job arranged back home, I was ready to begin the next chapter of my life. I had previously agreed to work in my hometown at Marshall and Brooks Financial. They offered me the job straight away after we conducted Zoom interviews. Everything was falling into exactly the right shape, or so I thought. On a lovely June afternoon, the cab dropped me off in front of my house. I remained there for a time, soaking in the known scene. Mom's rose bushes were in full bloom, though they looked different from how she used to maintain them. The lawn was neatly trimmed, and new curtains hung in the windows. Little changes that had happened while I was away at college. Wheeling my suitcases up the front walk, I reached for my keys with a smile. I was already imagining sleeping in my old room tonight. But when I tried to unlock the door, something was wrong. The key wouldn't turn. Tried one more, considering perhaps my tiredness from the trip. But no, the key most definitely didn't fit. "What the crap?" I mumbled, trying the key one again, then gave up. Since it was middle of the day, I loudly banged on the door. They might be watching TV. Linda answered the door, surprise spreading in her eyes. Like she had been baking, she was sporting an apron and had flour on hand. "Carol, what are you doing here?" I wheeled my bag inside and saw Dad and Sophie in the living room, both looking exactly shocked by my entrance. Dad sat in his preferred armchair, Mom's old armchair, really, reading something on his tablet, while Sophie was spread out on the couch with her phone. "What exactly do you mean?" I responded, glancing around at what appeared to be subdued alterations to the living room decor. Why were the locks changed? Dad rubbed his neck, that uneasy habit he had developed permanently. "Oh, that is, I changed them last month for safety. The area saw some break-ins." "You could have told me," I remarked, attempting to keep my voice free from irritation. "Then sent me a fresh key, since this is my residence, really." Linda responded gently, "We weren't expecting you," her arms crossed across her chest. She was looking somewhat uneasy after washing the flour off her hands. "Why not? Last week was my graduation week. I told you folks I was heading home to begin my new employment." Feeling more and more uncomfortable, I gazed between them. Something was off about their reactions. Even Sophie had put down her phone and was watching the scene unfold with an odd expression. "Carol," Dad cut in suddenly, standing up, "can we talk in the office for a minute?" I followed him into Mom's old office, my office now, technically. The room still had Mom's degrees on the wall, her collection of financial reference books on the shelves. He closed the door behind us, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he turned to face me. "Listen, honey," he started, his voice low. "There's something you need to know." I frowned, waiting for him to continue. "Linda, well, she thinks this house belongs to me." I stared at him, not comprehending. "I told her it was my house," he continued, not meeting my eyes, "that I gave it to your mother and you out of kindness after the divorce, and that after your mom passed, it reverted to me. She thinks she's just been living here because I allowed it." I must have stood there gaping at Dad for a full minute before finding my voice again. My first instinct was to storm out of the office and tell Linda everything. Now I understood her surprised look when I showed up. In her mind, I was just some freeloader trying to crash in their house. "Have to tell her the truth," I said, moving toward the door. But Dad caught my arm. "Please, Carol," he begged, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just give me a little time. I'll find us a new place to live, I promise. I just need to figure out how to tell her without destroying our marriage." "Destroying your marriage?" I hissed. "What about what you're doing to me?" He pulled a set of keys from his pocket, holding them out like a peace offering. "These are for the new locks. Please, sweetheart, just a few weeks. That's all I'm asking. Let me handle this my way." I took the keys, feeling sick to my stomach. "Fine," I said finally, "but this is insane, Dad. You know that, right?" He nodded, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, honey. I'll make this right, I promise." But things started going downhill immediately. At dinner that night, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Linda kept shooting me these looks across the table, all her previous warmth gone. The woman who used to bake my favorite cookies and invite me to book club now acted like I was a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. "More potatoes, Dad?" Sophie asked, completely oblivious to the tension. "Would anyone mind if I redecorated the living room?" Linda asked suddenly, not looking at me. "The current setup is a bit dated." I gripped my fork tighter, knowing she was talking about Mom's furniture arrangement. Dad coughed awkwardly and changed the subject. The next morning, I was making coffee when Linda cornered me in the kitchen. She was still in her robe, hair uncombed, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Carol," she said, leaning against the counter, "I think we need to talk about your plans." "My plans?" "Yes. When are you planning to look for your own place?" She asked it casually, like she was talking about the weather. "Now that you have a job lined up, you should start thinking about moving out. You're a grown woman now, after all." Took a slow sip of coffee, counting to 10 in my head. "Actually, I've talked to Dad about staying here for now. He's fine with it." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment I thought she might argue. Instead, she just turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and a growing sense of dread about how this was all going to play out. The next 2 weeks were like living in a hostile environment. Linda's attitude shifted from cold to downright passive-aggressive. She accidentally washed my clothes with colors that would bleed, claiming she forgot which laundry basket was mine. She'd cook family dinners but conveniently make just enough for 3 people, acting surprised when I came to the table. When I tried to watch TV in the living room, she'd suddenly need to vacuum right there. If I was using the kitchen to make breakfast, she'd barge in and start reorganizing the cabinets, muttering about how some people never learn to keep things tidy. She even moved my mother's favorite vase from its spot on the mantel to some corner shelf, claiming it didn't match her new decorating vision. The worst part was watching Sophie follow her mother's lead. My half-sister, who just weeks ago had been sending me memes and calling me for advice about boys, now rolled her eyes whenever I entered a room. She started calling me that girl when talking about me to her friends on the phone, loud enough for me to hear. Despite the tension at home, my professional life was taking off. I visited Marshall and Brooks Financial, where they showed me my future workspace, a nice corner desk with a view of downtown. My future colleagues seemed friendly and welcoming, especially Sarah from the risk assessment team, who offered to take me to lunch. "When do you start?" she asked over sandwiches. 2 weeks, I replied, just enough time to settle in at home. That evening at dinner, I shared my start date with the family, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. "They showed me my office today," I said. "I start in 2 weeks." Linda's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down with exaggerated care. "Well, isn't that wonderful? Once you get your first paycheck, you can start looking for your own apartment. I know of some nice complexes across town, very affordable for young professionals." I caught Dad's pleading look across the table. His eyes seemed to beg me to keep quiet, to maintain his lie just a little longer. I stabbed at my peas and said nothing. To avoid the tension at home, I started reconnecting with old high school friends. Katie and Jessica were still in town, and we'd meet for coffee or shopping trips, falling back into our old rhythms as if no time had passed. But coming home was always uncomfortable. I'd walk in and hear hushed conversations from the kitchen or living room that would stop abruptly when I appeared. Dad and Linda would spring apart like guilty teenagers. Papers would be hastily shoved into drawers, and fake smiles would plaster themselves across their faces. One Saturday morning, I woke up to an unusually quiet house. No sound of Linda's weekend meal prep in the kitchen. No Sophie's music blasting from her room. No Dad watching sports on TV. The silence felt wrong somehow, like the calm before a storm. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, checking each room as I went. The kitchen was spotless, not just clean, but unused since the night before. The living room was empty, the throw pillows perfectly arranged on the couch. Sophie's boots, usually cluttering the entryway, were gone. Even Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. I checked my phone. No messages, no notes about where everyone had gone. My first thought was that maybe they'd gone out for breakfast, but something felt off. They never went out for breakfast without at least leaving a note. Even during these tense weeks, they'd maintained that basic courtesy. I tried calling Dad first, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Weird. I tried a few more times with the same result, that automated voice telling me the person I was trying to reach was unavailable. A knot started forming in my stomach. Finally, I called Linda. She picked up on the fourth ring just as I was about to hang up. "What do you want?" Her voice was sharp, hostile in a way I'd never heard before. In the background, I could hear waves and what sounded like tropical music. "I just wanted to know where everyone is," I said, caught off guard by her tone. I woke up, and the house was empty. She laughed, an ugly, mean sound that made my stomach clench. "Oh, didn't we tell you? We're in the Maldives. First-class flights, luxury resort, the works." She paused, her tone dripping with mockery. "We didn't mention it because, frankly, we didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you, too. Not that you'd know anything about paying for things yourself." "What?" "Save it," she cut me off. "I'm sick of this whole situation. You're nothing but a lazy freeloader living in our house like you own the place. Your father might put up with it, but I'm done. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have a grown woman living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities?" My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mother's chair, actually, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. "Linda, No, you listen to me," she snarled. "Your father never loved you. You were just an obligation. He's already wasted enough money on your college education, and now you're squatting in our house like some entitled princess. Well, I've had enough. Did you think you could just live here forever, mooching off us while we work hard to maintain this home. I could hear Sophie giggling in the background and Dad's muffled voice saying something I couldn't make out. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. When we get back, she continued, her voice dripping with venom, I want you gone. Do you understand me? Pack your things and get out of our house. If you're still there when we return, I'll throw you out myself, and trust me, I won't be gentle about it. I don't care where you go. Live on the street for all I care. You're not our problem anymore. And don't bother trying to call your father. He agrees with me, he's just too weak to tell you himself. We've already blocked your number. Have a nice life, Carol. Or don't. I really couldn't care less. The line went dead. I sat in that kitchen for what felt like hours, fury slowly replacing shock. They were living in my house, the house my mother had worked for, had left to me, and they had the nerve to call me a freeloader, to try to throw me out. Well, I'd had enough of playing along with Dad's lies. I'd blocked their numbers on my phone, my hands still shaking, but now with anger rather than hurt. Then I started methodically going through the house, gathering their belongings. Linda's expensive clothes, Sophie's school stuff, Dad's golf clubs. Everything went into boxes and suitcases. I worked through the entire Saturday, fueled by rage and bitter disappointment. By Sunday morning, I had their life packed up and stacked in the garage. I found a 24-hour locksmith who could come right away. He worked quickly, replacing the locks on all the doors. It cost a small fortune, but it was worth every penny. When he finished, I handed him my credit card, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as I clutched the new keys. Monday morning, I started my new job at Marshall and Brooks. For 2 weeks, I threw myself into work, learning the ropes, making new friends, trying not to think about the confrontation I knew was coming. I kept their stuff in the garage, but rearranged the house back to how Mom had it, removing every trace of Linda's decorating vision. Then came that Friday. I pulled into the driveway after work to find them standing there, Dad looking nervous, Linda red-faced with fury, and Sophie hanging back with a scowl. They must have just gotten back from their vacation. Their suitcases were still in their rental car. Linda started screaming before I even got out of my car. How dare you change our locks? How dare you lock us out of our own house? I walked calmly past them to unlock the door. Linda followed, still yelling. We're calling the police. This is breaking and entering. This is our house. I turned to face them, something inside me finally snapping. No, Linda, it's not your house. It never was. This house belongs to me. My mother bought it before she even met Dad. She left it to me in her will. The only reason you've been living here is because I allowed it, temporarily. Linda laughed, but it was an uncertain sound. She looked at Dad. Tell her she's lying. Tell her this is our house. Dad wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. He just shrugged, his shoulders slumping. She's telling the truth. The house, it was always hers. I watched as the truth sank in, as Linda's face transformed from rage to calculation in a matter of seconds. Her entire demeanor changed, like a switch had been flipped. "Oh, Carol, sweetheart," she said, forcing a laugh. "You didn't think I was serious on the phone, did you? I was just joking. You know how I can get sometimes. All that sun and those tropical cocktails went to my head." "Stop it," I said quietly. But she kept going. "We're family, remember. All those nice times we had, the book club meetings, the holiday dinners. We can have that again." She took a step toward me, arms outstretched, like she was going to hug me. Dad jumped in then, his voice thick with emotion. "Princess, I'm so sorry. I know I handled this all wrong, but I love you. You're my daughter. Please, can't we work this out?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The father who left when I was 9, Who paid for my education but missed my life? Who lied about my house, my inheritance, my mother's legacy? Work what out, Dad? The fact that you lied to your wife about owning my house? Or the fact that you stood by while she planned to throw me out of it? Linda turned back to me with that smile. Carol, let's be reasonable. We can all live here together. We'll pay rent. No, I said firmly. We can't. Your things are in the garage. Take them and leave. That's when Linda's mask cracked again. You ungrateful little, after everything we've done for you, you'd throw your own family out on the street? I felt oddly calm as I replied, You just spent, what, $10,000 on a luxury vacation you deliberately hid from me? Pretty sure you can afford an apartment. Carol, please. Dad tried again, reaching for my arm. I know I messed up, but... No, I cut him off. You didn't mess up. You lied. For years, you let your wife believe she owned my mother's house. You watched her try to redecorate it, rearrange it, erase every trace of Mom. And when she planned to throw me out, you said nothing. I was going to tell her the truth, he protested. When? After I was gone? After she'd finished making my house her home? I turned my head away. I am done. Get ready and grab your stuff. Ignoring Linda's yells about ingratitude and cruelty, I walked inside and closed the door. I observed them carry garage boxes into their rental car via the glass. Linda still screamed, her cheeks flushed with rage. Sophie was crying. Dad looked defeated. For everything, they made 3 trips. Dad tested one more time, banging on the door as they loaded the last box. I did not open it. They went at last when the sun was lowering. Dad tried phoning from a different number the next day. He pleaded, Carol, kindly, we are able to correct this. No, Dad, we can't, I answered. Linda made it really evident how you guys actually felt about me, a freeloader, an obligation, someone you never liked. Perhaps they were her comments, but your silence spoke enough. 2 months ago is when that happened. Still living in Mom's house, my place. I made it mine once more, painted the walls, planted fresh roses in the garden, etc. I wonder occasionally where they ended up and considered them. Mostly, though, I considered Mom and how she made sure I would always have a house, whatever of circumstances. Dad still makes occasional calls from several numbers. I stopped picking. Some bridges once burnt should remain ashes. Strangely enough, I'm glad right now. Right now, my work is going nicely. At work, I have lately befriended others. And in this house, I find tranquility for the first time since Mom passed away. Healing sometimes requires letting go of people, of lies, of the fairy narrative of family you wanted to believe in.